Threading a sewing machine can be kind of complicated. Instead, let's use the tie-on method so we never have to thread a sewing machine again. First, you're going to clip your sewing machine thread with a long enough tail so that you have some thread to work with. So let's say that we're changing our thread to this green color. It doesn't matter which hand you hold the threads in, but I'm just using the two different colors to show you the difference. So start by taking the thread that's in your right hand and put it underneath the thread in your left hand. Then you're going to take that tail of the thread in your right hand and wrap it around itself. It's going in between these two, so it's not going around the green thread at all. Then you're going to put the green thread through that loop that you just created, and then you're going to grab both ends, all four ends basically, and you're going to pull at the same time. And then I like to check each thread and pull them tight to make sure that it's nice and secure. This is called a square knot, and this is a small enough knot to go through the eye of your sewing machine needle without getting stuck. So once you've got that tied off, you can replace your old thread with your new thread. Go down to your needle, and you probably need to lift up your presser foot if your presser foot comes down automatically. If you have a domestic machine, you don't need to worry about that. Basically, that takes the tension off so that the thread can pull through easier. So then you just grab this thread, and mine's stuck on here. Make sure it's not stuck on anything. So then you just grab this thread, and it pulls right through. And you can cut that off, and your thread is changed. This technique also works gloriously well on sergers. So the process is the same. You're going to trim all of your threads and make sure that you give yourself long enough on the thread so that you have something to work with. And you're just going to snip them all. And I'm going to change it to white. So again, you begin with both ends of the thread in your hand, and you're going to put the white thread behind the blue thread, and you're going to wrap it around itself and put it in that pinch that you have, and then put the blue thread through that loop, and then you're going to pull on all the ends at the same time. Now the white thread is what we had a loop created, so we want that one to be the tightest. So I'm going to pull both ends of that thread to make sure that's really tight. And then I'm going to pull this one, and then I'm going to pull it this way, and it's nice and strong. So you're going to repeat the same process for all of your threads on your serger. Now, when you have all of your threads tied, you have to do something a little bit different for your serger. So this is getting a little messy here, so I'm just going to pull on these ends of all of these to make sure that the connection is up here and the thread is coming down straight. And I'll do the same with all of these. So you can't just pull on this thread like we did on our sewing machine, because it'll just get all tangled up and it'll break. And rethreading a serger is a nightmare. So instead of doing that, we're going to go about this very carefully, and it's going to work just fine. So first we need to free up this little thread chain and bring it back to the individual threads that make it up. So I'm going to lift up my presser foot, and I'm going to turn my hand wheel so that my needles come up, and I'm just jiggling my hand wheel back and forth, and you can see that my thread is loosening. Make sure you're pulling on the thread end gently so that it starts to loosen, so that you see these individual threads are starting to separate here. So once we've got that, we can cut off this thread chain, and now it's just individual threads here. And then while holding on to this, we're going to take out our thread from our tension knobs here. These tension knobs, well, they put a lot of tension on the thread, so that can make it so that the knots that we just tied come undone. So if we take it out of those tension knobs, then it'll have an easier time coming through all these other parts. So now that that's free, you see that I'm already pulling on this and it's starting to come through pretty easily. But I get kind of scared doing this all at the same time because I really don't want to rethread my serger. So I'm going to pull on these one by one. And for the top threads, they're usually still stuck inside of the machine. You can see how they're kind of still going under the machine here. So I'm going to move my needle out of the way. And I'm just going to use my pair of pliers or something thin enough to slide under there. And I'm just going to try to pull that thread up so that it's no longer under the machine. And it's really hard to see, but now my threads, they just come down through here, through the eye of the needle, and then they just come straight out. So they're not going down into the serger anymore. So we have all of our threads nice and loose here. And one by one, I'm just gonna take each thread and start to pull it through. So one thread successfully pulled through the serger. So I'm gonna repeat the same process for each one. And if you feel any resistance while you're pulling, don't fight the resistance. You need to find where it's getting caught. So for instance, on this one, as it's going through the needle, it does have sometimes a little bit of a harder time for the knot part to go through because it's getting stuck on this angle. So I'm just going to take it from the other side and try to help ease it through without breaking it. So whenever you're doing these two top threads here, there always might be a little bit of resistance when you pull it through the needle. This one's showing a lot of tension. That's because it got stuck back here. So I've loosened that up and now it's pulling through nice and easy. Again, this one's getting kind of caught up on the needle there. So I'm just gonna grab it from the other side and kind of help it go through a little bit straighter. Sometimes it just needs a little bit of a wiggle. Another thing that you can do is, because the thread is coming through the needle and then it's getting pulled down, that's kind of not like a straight path for it to go through. So I'll pull it up this way so that it's more straight through the needle and then just pull it through. And if you get to this point and the knot comes unthreaded while you're trying to thread it through your needle, that's not the worst thing in the world because all you have to do is thread it through the needle and then you still didn't have to thread the rest of your serger, which is still a win. So once you've got all the threads pulled through, make sure that you put each thread back through the tension knobs. Otherwise, it's not gonna look pretty when you start sewing it. And then I like to pull on these ones up here to make sure that everything is taut. So I'm going to put the presser foot down, hold on to my chain, turn the machine on, and fingers crossed that it makes a beautiful thread chain when I start sewing. And there we have it, a beautifully threaded serger without having to thread the whole thing using the square knot method.